All right, guys, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. We are going to talk about how Paul George injured himself during a workout, had surgery, and what that means for the 76ers heading into the 2025-26 season. But I also had a response from somebody that basically said the 76ers had to sign Paul George in that time frame when Tyrese Maxey wasn't signed yet because they had his bird rights and they were trying to fit. They had a lot of salary cap that they had to use. I disagree. They didn't have to sign Paul George. They could have went in some other directions. We're going to talk about maybe some of the other directions they could have gone in instead of signing Paul George. And I want to remind everybody what the narrative was leading up to last offseason, right before Daryl Morey signed Paul George. How the fans and the media were basically begging him not to. And how he was telling everyone, this is the way. We're going to look at what was said back then, just in case you forgot, because some people don't seem to remember that. Some people say, you wanted Paul George, and now you're going to switch up, and you were excited. Bro, anybody that watched my channel leading up to that, I was warning everyone, Daryl Morey is going to sign Paul George. I was calling him the Michael Jordan of Tobias Harris's. But I was warning you that if the Clippers don't sign him, Daryl Morey is going to. And then once they sign him, I had no choice but to talk about the fit and how it potentially could work if healthy. I'm going to remind you, don't worry. Hit the like button. Thanks for being here. If you are absolutely tortured by this team just like I am, hit the like button. We don't like it, but for me just coming up here and continuously expressing my torture, if it helps you deal with it, hit the like button for me. 76ers star Paul George underwent a successful arthroscopic procedure on his left knee Monday to treat an injury suffered during a recent workout, a team official tells ESPN. Paul George will now begin a rehab program and will be reevaluated prior to the start of training camp. My first reaction is, I think I said this a couple days ago, this front office is going to have such a difficult time selling a single ticket. The fan base is so tired of this. The fan base is so sick of this, bro. And I just saw an advertisement for Sixers season tickets, and it said, place your deposit now. My deposit? After every season ticket holder got blatantly scammed last season because you lied to the fans, you wouldn't tell them Joel Embiid was hurt because you wanted to sell all the season tickets, then the NBA fined you for lying. Anyway, it's just unbelievable. I even with VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, if they re-sign Quentin Grimes, the mainstream 76ers fan, the fan throughout the city, the casual fan, if you will, they're not fucking going to Sixers games, bro. There's about to be a rude awakening in Josh Harris's revenue statements for the 76ers this season, and there was a rude awakening in the revenue statements last season. But yeah, Paul George hurt himself during a workout. Now there's two things. This guy can't even complete a workout. Bro, we're talking about a workout. We're not talking about hyperextending your knee, driving to the rim in even a preseason game like he did last year. We're not talking about a player falling into the side of your knee in a preseason game. We're talking about a non-contact workout. This guy got injured and had to have arthroscopic surgery on his knee. My guy, please retire. You had a solid career. You know, you averaged, just 2 years ago, you played 74 games, averaged 22 points per season, per game that season. Maybe you ended your career early by putting on a 76ers jersey. Maybe that was your biggest mistake, but you admitted you took the most money. You didn't want to re-sign with the Clippers. They offered you right around what they gave Kawhi Leonard. 2 or 3 year contract. You wanted a max contract. You took the money. You were not aware that putting on a 76ers jersey would end your basketball career, but it might be time to retire. If you can't even complete a workout without getting hurt and having surgery, it's over, bro. Do you know what you can do, Paul George, to not get injured? Podcasting. Just do the podcasting. Clearly, you can't even do a workout anymore without getting hurt. And I'm not here to slander you, but you're 34 years old. Here's what's happening. LeBron James has brainwashed NBA GMs into thinking that they should give 34-year-old players max contracts. Daryl Morey and other GMs around the league do not seem to understand that players are cooked at 34. The average retirement age in the NBA is between 32 and 34. LeBron James is not a human being. He is an alien. He's always been a genetic freak. And whether you guys want to argue that he's on PEDs or whatever else, why the fuck doesn't Paul George take some PEDs then? If LeBron James is only playing this long because of PEDs, why isn't everyone else taking PEDs? LeBron James is just different genetically. He always has been. If you just go watch his high school dunk contest, he's a freak of nature. Kevin Durant is also a freak. A once-in-a-lifetime player, a 7-foot guard, okay? Nobody else is like that. But everybody seems to think, you know, with modern medicine and load management and with the resting and all this stuff, these players are now playing well into their late 30s. Oh, yeah? Ask Damian Lillard how it's going. You see what I'm saying? DeMarcus Cousins, torn Achilles, 30 years old, done, cooked. It's over. Players who are not LeBron James or Kevin Durant or Michael Jordan. Yeah, Vince Carter played for a long time, but he wasn't getting max contracts back then. Michael Jordan wasn't getting max contracts when he was 40. These players are retired. Daryl Morey does not understand that. Here's a comment from Daryl Morey. Shout out to my guy RB. Talking about Kyle Lowry and Reggie Jackson, just to emphasize the point that he doesn't understand age. Okay? Kyle Lowry is 39. Eric Gordon is 37. Here's Daryl Morey's comment on those guys last year. And then we're going to talk about what the narrative was leading up to signing Paul George. And I want to remind you the things that Daryl Morey said in a specific press conference that doesn't leave my brain capacity. I found the article because I'm not making shit up. You guys think I just sit up here and make shit up? I'm not making it up. I went and found the damn article for you. Daryl Morey says this on Eric Gordon and Kyle Lowry. Well, Eric, I think, gave us quite a few good minutes last year. Quite a few good minutes. Obviously, it seemed like we had more hand and wrist injuries than any team I've ever had. Like, how can these guys not connect age with injury? Why do I keep getting these people who are supposed to be the best basketball minds in the world acting like 40-year-old players just randomly got injured? They can't put it together and figure out 40-year-old players get injured a lot because they're 40. They just can't figure it out, bro. Oh, we signed all these old motherfuckers and they all just got hurt. We had an injury bug. No, you had an age bug, dude. Come on, you gotta be smarter than that, man. You have to. You gotta be smarter than that. And, he maxed Paul George, and he just does not believe in age. Now, somebody replied to me and said, let's not be naive and do hindsight is 2020. The 76ers going into that season, they had all the cap space they needed. They had $65 million in cap space, but they had to use it before they could sign Tyrese Maxey. And this particular response that I got was, there was basically no other option. They had to sign Paul George, or else Tyrese Maxey's contract was going to affect the cap. Yes, the 76ers had Tyrese Maxey's bird rights, so they could hold off on signing Tyrese Maxey. They could use their cap space, and then they could max Tyrese Maxey and go over the salary cap without accruing any penalties, a luxury tax, hard caps, and things like that. So yes, you're right. They had to use their cap space before signing Tyrese Maxey, or signing Tyrese Maxey would have taken up that cap space. But they did not have to max 34-year-old Paul George. Okay, here's the list of free agents that were available leading up to that 2024 signing of Paul George. Spencer Dinwiddie, Precious Achiuwa, Luke Kennard, Landry Shamet, Doug McDermott, Taylor Horton Tucker, Cedi Osman, Jay Crowder, Gordon Hayward, Buddy Hield, Sadiq Bey, Garrick Trent Jr., Klay Thompson, DeMar DeRozan, Miles Bridges, Tobias Harris, Contavious Caldwell-Pope. Now, I'm not saying any of the names on this list move the needle incredibly, but a couple of them for the same price as a $50 million Paul George signing makes a lot more sense. This is what we were desperately trying to tell Daryl Morey leading up to that offseason. Unfortunately, Daryl Morey doesn't know who any of these players are. I would have went defense. I would have went role players. I would have went guys who can catch and shoot. I probably would have went Contavious Caldwell-Pope, Sadiq Bey, and Luke Kennard, just off the top of my head, all for probably less than $50 million. And if you sign those guys to 2 or 3 year contracts, whatever it was, yes, you could have used your cap space to add more depth to the roster without strapping yourself to a max 34-year-old. And then you could have signed Tyrese Maxey. This is what we were desperately asking him to do. Now, I'm going to remind you that the media was basically telling him to do this and asking him why you're about to sign Paul George. We know you're about to sign Paul George. Why? The media asked him directly, don't you think the league is trending towards more depth? When you look at Oklahoma City Thunder, when you look at the Indiana Pacers, when you look at even the Boston Celtics, yeah, they overpaid everybody, but they didn't go star hunting. They made trades for guys like Derek White and Drew Holiday. Here's the narrative leading up to that offseason. Okay, there was an article by the Sixers Sense, and it's titled just beautifully, "One Mistake Daryl Morey is Close to Making and How to Avoid It." This was, all of us knew he was about to sign Paul George. And they put a quote in here, and they put a link to the quote, and I said, I need the full quote because I remember it happening. So I went to the link, and I got the quotes myself. And here's what Daryl Morey said in response to reporters begging him to use the cap space on more depth and not an aging star. Here's what he said. Generally, historically, top players work better. Okay. I think, yeah, compared to basically you're like, have less good players, but more role players. That's an actual quote that came out of this guy's mouth. So you're basically telling me have less good players and more role players. He only knows star players. He doesn't even think role players are good players. The guy is a fucking nerd who studies statistics and AI. He's good at drafting because he studies statistics and AI, but he's absolutely atrocious at signing free agents and building a good team. He said blatantly, have less good players and more role players. I think generally the history of the NBA would favor, even with the new CBA, get studs who can then put the work in and on the front office to find the players that fit around them. He literally said, sign max players, even if they're too old, or he still never even hints at their age. He just doesn't understand that 34 is not, Paul George is no longer a top player at 34. If you were signing 27-year-old Paul George, hell yeah, bro. But he basically said, get Paul George and then, leave it up to the front office to find the players that fit around him. The vet minimums. The Kyle Lowrys, the Eric Gordons, the Reggie Jacksons, the Andre Drummonds. And that is how you built such a pathetic roster last season. And I know 2 days ago I was saying that this is a good roster. It is a good roster if healthy. That's all I was saying. They are not healthy. And if you guys thought that I was ignoring that fact, you were right. I remembered I was a little bit hungover also. So disregard that entire video. They're probably not going to be healthy. It's always about get the best players you can, get a great coach, figure out how to win with that set of players, and then go win the damn thing. It's not about, hey, this new thing is exactly how everyone's doing it. You want to be able to shoot more. I think we learned that. That's a long trend. We learned that. Every year he just throws shit at the wall and then he's like, so last year we learned that we need shooting in a good team. Now this year he goes, so we basically learned that we need youth and athleticism. Like, how are you in charge and you don't know? You don't even know the trends that are happening in the NBA, and he blatantly ignored the trends that were happening in the NBA, which is depth, youth, athleticism, shooting. We told him that. Reporters told him that to his fucking face. He argued with them. They knew he was going to sign Paul George. He signed Paul George, and then he signed a bunch of vet minimums. They had a terrible season, and this is exactly what everybody was trying to warn him and ask him not to do, and he did it anyway. This upcoming season will probably be a complete disaster again for the 76ers, and the ownership will have no option but to fire Daryl Morey and probably Nick Nurse and have a new GM desperately try to get off of the Joel Embiid and Paul George contract and move forward with the youth that Daryl Morey did put on the roster. I think this season, if I'm being realistic, now that I'm not hungover, my brain is working completely 100% functionally. If I had to predict, this upcoming season, we're going to see all the young players. They're going to show strides and they're going to show you promise. And we're going to have two really, really bad contracts on the roster again. And then everybody's going to get fired and they're going to have to try to get rid of those contracts. I don't see anything else happening this upcoming season. Maybe I did 2 days ago. I was hungover, yes. But also, I thought Paul George was healthy. Oh, somebody just put me out of my misery, man. Thank you guys for tuning in.